Welcome to the Upward Running Podcast, where faith fuels your fitness journey.
Welcome back to the Upward Running Podcast. This is your one stop each week to be motivated and inspired to get off the couch and onto the running trail where you can, in turn, inspire others to do the same. Let's learn, laugh, and leap into running together, giving God the glory for what we are able to do in His name. Amen. Well, I am your running host, Dean Thompson, coming to you once again from the Upward Sports Studio. Well, if you have listened to this podcast any length of time at all, then you have heard a story from Jerry Snider. Today we're going to share another one of his stories, and he's going to tell us what we can learn from a flea collar. And then I had some things get in the way of my running journey recently, and I'm going to talk about how I was able to get around those things and then how that kind of instructs us on our spiritual life. And joining me for those stories and much more is Upward Running Director Mitchell Hollis.
Thanks for having me, Dean. Does it feel weird doing our podcast at a different time?
It is weird.
It is.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know.
So we're doing it a little bit later in the day than we normally would. We had some scheduling conflicts this morning. But I went to Dallas this past week.
Yes.
Went out there for the Southern Baptist Convention, which was awesome. It was incredible. It was my first one of those I've ever been to. But I had two things happen that I wanted to mention. One I've already mentioned. Sunday morning, I went to Dallas First Baptist Church because it was literally directly across from my hotel. And I thought, well, there's no excuse for not getting up and going to church on Sunday morning. And Dean, it is a very traditional church. You know me, I like choirs. Mm-hmm. Their choir was over 200 people. I don't know exactly how many it was.
Wow.
But they sang one of my favorite choir songs, which is Thou, O Lord. And I told Holly, I said, it was sensory overload. And they had a full orchestra.
Wow.
As part of it. And there's nothing better than big live choir. I mean, it's so full. I mean, that sanctuary is humongous. I don't know how many it seats, probably 5,000, something like that. And it just fills the room. And then, of course, Robert Jeffers, I like him as a pastor. Still very old school.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got a 3-point sermon. He does the sinner's prayer. Ask everybody who prayed the prayer to raise their hand.
Yeah.
And so traditional, but it's just a humongous church. And then I got peer pressured. They would say they didn't peer pressure me, but they did peer pressure me. Claire and Travis were going to go for a run one day. Well, there's this rule with Upward. I call it the Billy Graham rule, where you can't be alone with another female in the office, which is a good rule. I mean, and so for Travis and Claire to go anywhere, there's got to be either another female or another male, which a lot of organizations have this rule. So they're the only two runners that were there, and they were wanting to go run, and all I'm doing is walking and rucking right now. And I said, well, I'll go.
Oh.
And I said, I'll just do 3 and turn around. Well, I wound up doing 6.
Oh.
And I haven't ran 6 in probably a year.
Yeah.
But Dean, I'm going to tell you, I was surprised.
Really?
It wasn't hard. I was a little bit sore the past couple of days, but I guess it's the rucking. The rucking gets into my cardio enough, because I honestly thought my cardio was what's going to hold me up.
Sure.
But the walking and the rucking, the cardio's there. I'm getting the strength in. It just wasn't hard at all.
Huh.
And so I was very surprised. So
well, congratulations on that. That's good.
But it was kind of a backhanded peer pressure situation. So I'm sure they're probably listening to this, and they'll be calling and say, we didn't peer pressure you. But
those two will do that.
Yeah, for sure.
And
but it was a great trip.
And I could picture him behind the scenes going, hey, let's do this to Mitchell. Right?
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Well, let me tell you an interesting story about how God works. Okay, so we don't have a pastor right now at our church, right? We've been looking for pastor. Debbie is on the pastor search committee.
Right.
And so this past week, Debbie is praying, God, just show me who you want. We're getting to that point now where it's like, gosh, we really, really need somebody to be looking at least. And they've interviewed a few, but they haven't been the ones that we needed. And so she's like, show me who it is. God showed her a picture of a man in a black suit.
And it wasn't Johnny Cash.
And he looks at that man in that black suit, and it's somebody that you know. And he says, or Debbie looks at it and goes, that is, and she called the guy's name. And she said, God is telling me that that's who needs to be our next pastor. That night, another lady that's on the search committee called Debbie and said, hey, we were thinking, what do you think about so-and-so for pastor? Same guy. They had not talked. They hadn't thought about, his name had not been on any list. Nowhere. This is just a guy who he goes to Salem. He goes to Salem, and his name just happened to be out there. And he's not looking for a job.
Really?
But this lady's husband said, I'll call him. So she called him. He's very interested in becoming our pastor.
Really?
I mean, God just does stuff just out of the blue like that. That's just amazing.
Well, actually, the only familiar face I saw from Dalton in Dallas was Derry Kittle.
Is that
Salem
right?
pastor, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well,
wow, that's pretty...
It's pretty powerful.
Pretty awesome.
Yeah. Well, let's get to this week's podcast. The post of the week this week comes from Rebecca Wang. We've used several of hers lately. It says, she said, thanks, Dean Thompson, for the Thursday Night Lives. Your input on how your interval workout wasn't easy helped me push through when at interval 1, I felt too long a speed run. Interval 2, I was determined to shorten the next 4, but then I remembered how you took larger steps on your last one when you wanted to quit. I also remembered a different Thursday Night Live running form and just leaned forward while taking larger steps. Holy cow, look at the difference in speed. Number 4, I just zoned out and did my thing. Number 5, I wanted to be my last. Number 6, I decided to try what I did for 3 again, and about halfway through, I was just wanting to finish well. In the end, according to my Garmin, PR at the 10K distance of 105.50, but I survived and thrived. So, more intervals, here I come.
Wow. Well, congratulations, first of all, Rebecca. I know that's got to be pretty cool. Hey, let me take a shameless plug right here. So Rebecca is very active on Run Club Social on the app.
Yep.
We need everybody to be just as active as Rebecca. Mm-hmm. So we're in there right now. We're cultivating that Run Club Social right now on the new app. We're slowly getting people over from Facebook, the Facebook group, into the new app. And it's pretty incredible. We have all kind of breakout rooms in there too. So it's not just one big room. So if you've not been in there yet, if you're a member of Run Club and you haven't been in there yet, go in there. Do what Rebecca's doing. Rebecca's doing her part of it because it takes everybody to make a community, right?
That's right.
So, and if you're not part of Run Club, well then what are you waiting for?
That's right. And don't forget to tune in on Thursday nights.
Exactly.
She
and that will be going to the app as well here pretty soon.
That's right.
So we're excited about that.
We are. So this is a great post, and the reason why I highlighted is not because she mentioned my name in here, but because when things aren't working, try something new. Yeah. Try something different. And it's amazing how things, sometimes they don't work. Yeah. And you know what? If they don't work, well, then don't try that again.
Yeah.
But try something, instead of banging your head against a wall. And I like that. The run of the week, Bill Silvers. Last weekend, I had the honor of competing in the 39th National Veterans Golden Age Games in Memphis, Tennessee. The event brought together over 1,000 veteran athletes from every state across the U.S., all coming to compete in a wide range of events. By God's grace, I won gold medals in the 200-meter, 400-meter, and 800-meter races, and a silver medal in the 1,500-meter. I gave God all the praise, glory, and honor for the strength and endurance He gave me throughout the competition. Glory be to God. Moreover, running has become a ministry for me, a way to encourage others and share God's goodness. Whether I'm at the starting line or the finish line, I hope others see not just an athlete, but a testimony of what God can do through someone who trusts Him. Each race is an opportunity to shine your light no matter the outcome. The races are not just about winning. I thank God for the opportunity to meet, greet, and compete with fellow veterans, each with their own story of service, sacrifice, and resilience. Before each race, I pray not to win, but that every athlete will be able to compete to the best of their ability, free from pain or injury. I also pray, especially for myself, that I won't trip and fall again, as I have in the past. During each race, I usually talk to God one more time, asking for continued strength and focus. And as I cross the finish line, I thank Him again for carrying me through. This experience was a true blessing, and I am humbled and grateful for the chance to participate. All glory to God. As Dean Thompson of Upward Running says, may God bless every step of every run and or walk. Go out there and shine your light. That quote inspires me every time I take the track. Finally, I want to thank the Department of Veterans Affairs for the amazing and well-organized Golden Age Games. It was truly an unforgettable experience.
So who knew we had a 3-time gold medalist?
That's right.
In our midst.
Right in Run Club.
Congratulations, Bill. I know he did mention this a few weeks ago. We talked about it.
That's right. Yeah.
And so congratulations. I hope to God that I'm this active.
Me too.
When I'm his age.
Me too.
He's an inspiration.
87 years old.
Wow.
Hey, Bill is one of those guys to me that when I see Bill, my mood immediately lifts.
Yeah,
you know,
sure.
you see him and you just automatically get on a higher plane because he just has that effect on people.
And he's proud of his age.
Yes.
Which you just don't see a lot.
That's true.
He's very proud of it.
That's true.
Just really cool.
Yeah. So neat event. I didn't realize this was put on by the veterans. That makes it even better. But yeah, that's a great thing. It's a reminder that no matter what you can do, that you can find an opportunity to shine God's light no matter what you do. He does it here at a track meet. You can do it wherever you go, whatever you do. Maybe it's not running, but maybe it's, I don't know, what else do you do? The grocery store.
Sure.
Surely there's somebody at the grocery store that you can shine a light on. So,
how do you handle a slow checkout line?
Yeah,
there's your opportunity.
There you go. Our trivia question from last week. What is the longest certified road race in the world? And the answer to that is the Sri Chinmoy Self-Transcendence 3,100-mile race. You heard that right. 3,100 miles, just shy of 5,000 K, or equal to about the distance is the most I have ever run in 1 year.
Yeah.
So,
and Dean, when you put this on here, I just knew it was going to be like running across a continent or something.
Yeah.
Nope.
This takes place all in Jamaica, Queens, New York. 5,649 laps around a school and a park. The lap is 883 meters long. And you have 52 days to finish this race. So the way that it works is every day you have from 6 a.m. until midnight to run as many miles as you can run. And then the course is closed down for 6 hours until the next day, which is interesting. I've never seen anything quite like that, but that's an interesting way to do it. The race was founded in 1997 by Sri Chinmoy. He's an Indian spiritual leader. This was an opportunity for runners to explore and transcend their perceived physical and mental limits. There's only about 54 individuals who have ever completed this race since it started. And they only let a handful of people in each year. So even if I wanted to go try to run this race, they wouldn't let me. So
I was sitting here, math nerd here, doing the math in my head. So technically, it's only 37 days. If you take that 6 hours out, multiply that out times the 52 days, that comes to 17 days. Subtract that off 52. Yeah, you got to be moving.
Yeah, it's 60 miles a day.
Yeah.
So 60 miles in 18 hours every single day for 50 days in a row that's pretty tough. That's a pretty tough thing to do. The record is 40 days for men and 45 days for women. Some people call it this race the Mount Everest of ultra running due to its extreme demands on physical and mental endurance, as you can imagine. What's interesting about this race is that it's meant to be, it's called the Self-Transcendence race. It's meant to be a spiritual thing. And so I looked at that and I thought, I don't know if I want to even talk about that. But then
this is where I got hung up. I was telling you.
Okay. Well, and here's the thing that was interesting to me. Sri Chinmoy is a guy who talks about overcoming mental barriers.
Right.
He talks about doing it from a spiritual standpoint. Mm-hmm. to me, he's really talking about doing it from a mental standpoint. He has coached a lot of athletes through their mental preparation. He was very instrumental in what Carl Lewis did when Carl Lewis won 12 medals in the Olympics. Mm-hmm. And Carl Lewis is a Christian, very open Christian. Sure. And so the guy's not anti-Christian. He's just not Christian.
Right.
And there is a difference, and I get that. But it's interesting. I got to thinking about this. So if somebody is really looking for God, mm-hmm. I mean, really deep down, yearning in their heart, looking for God, and they go out there and they look at all the options that are available, I feel like they have to come to the one and only God of Israel, mm-hmm. because there are no other gods out there that can compete. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
I mean, when you're looking for truth, that's where you land. And so I don't know. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Yeah. I just think it's interesting.
Yeah. When I read the word, I'm kind of like you. I was like, oh, come on.
Yeah.
Here we go again. But then I did a little digging, and to me, self-transcendence, which is the phrase used, it's really the first step that people must take in becoming a Christian. It is. The meaning of the term is a basic understanding that it's not all about you, but rather you are part of something bigger. Mm. That's what self-transcendent means, if you look it up in the dictionary. So what is the first step in us becoming a child of God? It's not all about me. There's something bigger than me. So the question becomes, here's where it gets messy. With this term, the question becomes, what God? Mm-hmm. They're searching for God. Is it nature? Is it religion? Is it sports? You name it. But as Christians, we understand that we are part of God's tapestry, and we are here to please Him. So, others might go in a much different direction, but the concept is not in and of itself bad. It's actually good.
Yeah.
But it's been perverted.
Yeah.
By society. So that's my take on it. I know it's kind of like so many other things, that what is meant to be a good thing, self-transcendence is good. As a society, we've perverted. I mean, the rainbow.
Yeah. Yeah.
We listened to a devotion yesterday morning at Upward, and Matt was talking about, the story of Noah. And
yeah.
I mean, that's a promise from God, but how we've taken such a positive, godly thing and we've completely perverted it. So I don't know. I got hung up on the self-transcendence, and it derailed me for about 45 minutes.
Well, I hope we doesn't sound crazy there, but I think it's a legit thing.
Yeah, it goes to show me, and this was a little bit of my conviction, I don't need to be so quick to dismiss things.
Good way to put it.
Because I am. I'm a little bit knee-jerk, and I need to do less of that.
Amen.
I asked, kind of talking about Travis, he'll enjoy this, but I asked him a question this weekend, and I said, just give me your knee-jerk reaction. He said, I don't give knee-jerk reactions. I was like, I do know that, and I do a lot.
I don't know how you stay away from knee-jerk reactions myself.
Upward Sports equips churches to run self-sustaining sports ministries in their communities. Whether you're a sports fanatic or on staff at a church, Upward Sports will give you all the tools you need to run a first-class sports ministry that allows you to reach families in your community. Upward Sports offers basketball, soccer, flag football, cheerleading, volleyball, baseball, and softball through league and camp offerings. At Upward Sports, we want to help your church make a difference and give you increased opportunities to share the gospel. Learn more today at upward.org. That's upward.org.
All right. So, listen, we're looking for stories. we need stories, so we're going to share one here from Jerry, but you have a story too. If you're listening to this, you have a story. So send it in. Go to upwardrunning.org and find the upwardrunning.com.
Upwardrunning.com.
And find the submit your story.
So how many times, let me ask you this, and I'm talking about you, the person listening. How many times have you heard us say this and you think, oh, man, I've got something I would really like to share, but it's just not good, or it's just vanilla, or it's not like all these other stories that I hear? Submit your story. Everybody needs to hear. I shouldn't say everybody. Somebody needs to hear what you're going through, because it's very likely that somebody else is going through the exact same thing. So
Amen.
You could be helping somebody out tremendously by sharing your story, as mundane as you think it is. If it's God's story, it's not vanilla.
That's right. Well, how about a crazy story from Fox News? This is talks about this guy named Michelino Sunseri. He's an ultra-marathon runner. Apparently, he's a really good one. He lives near the Grand Tetons, and recently he went out for a run on a section that thousands of people have run and hiked and biked, and apparently he broke some sort of well-known record on a section of that trail. So, of course, he went and he posted that to social media, what he had done. And the next thing he knew, federal agents found out about it and slapped him with a $5,000 fine, and not for breaking the record, but apparently for running on a piece of land that was off limits. So apparently the question initially was, did the guy even know about it? Because apparently the sign that was there was very, very small. There were no barriers or anything like that preventing you from going in this area. And I'm like, I'm kind of bouncing back and forth over, well, should the guy have known? Shouldn't he have known? I know I've run in places where I question a little bit. Matter of fact, not far from here in Wyoming, I remember there was a place that I was running one time, and I thought, I don't know if this road's okay or not.
You see cameras following you.
But anyway, so I've seen those kinds of places. But then, after all of this, we find out that not only did he know, but apparently he applied to go and run in this place, and they denied him a permit, apparently, to do whatever to film. I think he wanted to film, and they denied him the permit to film. Anyway, and it turns out that this section of the trail that he ran on that he wasn't supposed to run on was actually a cutoff, cutting off part of the course. So he was actually cheating at the same time, it sounds like. Now, I don't know if that's not true. I apologize to this guy, but that's what it sounds like.
Yeah.
And so it's funny how you can go from feeling sorry for somebody to, oh my gosh, now I want to smack the guy, just in a matter of just a few minutes of seeing the facts change as you watch this story unfold. So I don't know. A question comes up from this is public land. How much should we be able to run where we want to on public land and not? I mean, if it's a safety issue, I get it. If it's an environmental issue where there's going to be a real problem, I get it. But what if it's just I don't know, they just don't want to see people running in a particular area or something?
Before I get on my soapbox there, let me back up, because something very similar happened to me. This has been years ago. You remember that? I think I've probably shared this on this podcast, but I'm going to share it again because we got new listeners. So I was, back when I used to bike a lot, I was at a drive-in movie one night with our triathlon team. All the kids were there and all the parents. And I think this was back before you came along. And Obie Hooper, one of the parents on our triathlon team, he said, "Mitchell, what did you do?" I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "Well, I'm on Facebook right now. Everybody's trashing you." I said, What did I do?" And so I get on there, and this is the day that I stopped using Strava.
Yeah.
So on Strava, and this is probably what this guy's is. It's a Strava segment. Is that what they call it?
Yep.
So there's segments on Strava that you can go and you can try to run that segment, bike that segment, whatever. and become king of the mountain or whatever they call it. Well, evidently Crow Road, which is a road that I bike often, it's right down from my house. It's a long, straight road, is evidently a Strava segment. I didn't know this. I don't care.
Yeah.
I never got into trying to break segments, nor will I ever try to. Well, on one particular day, I turned on Crow Road, and one of my friends, Keith Burnett, pulled up beside me on the bike. Well, you know, I'm a not accomplished biker. I feel comfortable riding up beside a vehicle and putting my arm on it. And Keith and I sat and had a conversation the whole way down Crow Road. It's 2 miles long. And he and I were just chit-chatting, and I had my arm in the window, and I was still sitting on my bike. And unbeknownst to me, I shattered the Strava record because I was holding on to a vehicle talking to my friend.
Probably going 35 miles an hour.
And so a friend, he is a friend of mine, went on social media and said, well, I see the Crow Road segment just got broken. And just so happens I saw Mitchell holding on to a vehicle in an effort to break the record. And of course, 100% of the blood in my body went to my head when I read this. And I'm at a drive-in movie, and I'm calling Sandy, the person that made this, and I said, look, you need to take that off of social media right now. I said, I don't care that I broke a segment. I could care less about Strava. I was talking to my friend, whom he knows the friend too.
Yeah.
So that was the last day I was on Strava. And so point being, I'm glad you said, allegedly this is what happened, because you don't know
you don't know what happened.
Things.
Yep.
Now, to the public lands, my beef there is, it's just like the high school tracks trying to put chains on the gate.
Yes.
And locking the bathrooms.
Yep.
Don't do that.
Yeah.
These are public places. It should be for the communities.
Yep. Unless it's getting abused in some way. If it is getting abused, and I understand.
Yeah, and put up cameras and find the person abusing it and convict them to the furthest extent of the law.
Absolutely.
But don't close it down for the whole population.
That's right.
And don't post about people on social media. Pick up the phone and call them. That's why I told Sandy. I said, why don't you just pick up the phone and call me?
Yeah. Yep.
You know. So
absolutely.
Anyway.
It's a good lesson.
It's a funny story looking back, but it was not funny in the moment.
Well, let's talk about this Jerry Snider story. Only Jerry could pose this question. What can we learn from a flea collar? This is called Sermon on the Flea Collar. If it scares you, it might be a good thing to try. That's Seth Godwin, entrepreneur. God spoke to me from a flea collar. Yes, I said flea collar. And no, I'm not crazy. It was summer of 1983. I took my 7-year-old daughter to visit the local animal shelter, and soon the furry little critter in cage number 823 became Lady the Wonder Dog, the newest and fastest growing member of our family. Minutes later, cash register bells were ringing. We started off with a food dish, a water dish, a collar, and a leash. Add to that a large bag of puppy chow, a box of doggy treats, and a good deal on a doghouse from my neighbor. Still on the shopping list were a license, grooming brush, nail clippers, shampoo, soap, and toys. Almost out of money, we topped off the day with a checkup at the veterinarian's office and some picture taking. We were making memories. Lady the Wonder Dog was winning the hearts of everyone she met, including a pack of fleas. No problem. A trip to the pet store, and a few more dollars later, our doggie was stepping out in a fashionable flea and tick collar. Now here comes the sermon I was telling you about. The flea and the tick collar come in a tiny box. Within the box, the collar was coiled and sealed in a foil pouch. According to the instructions, the collar was to be unrolled and then cut to the proper length to comfortably fit the dog. Once fitted and in place, a tiny latch was pressed down to keep it secure. But first, and this is a very important but first, in order to get the flea and tick fighting chemicals to work in the collar, the instructions read, stretch to activate. And that was the sermon on the flea collar, stretch to activate. I start my day stretching with 30 minutes of yoga. I read every day to stretch my mind. Sometimes it's a difficult stretch to practice the golden rule, but that's what I try to do. A happy, healthy life calls for a lot of stretching, and now that I've rounded the corner on my 70th birthday, I'm looking forward to even more stretching. Isaiah 43:18 and 19 says, "Do not call to mind former things or ponder things of the past. Behold, I will do something new." There are places to go, London, Paris, and Rome. There are people to meet, the president, the Pope, and Patch Adams. There are talents to cultivate, singing, dancing, and playing the drums. There are people who need my help. Lady the Wonder Dog gave us loads of happy times and good memories. Now she's in dog heaven. But the sermon from the Flea collar remains. Stretch to activate. Find your comfort zone and leave it. I like that thought. Stretch to activate. And I guess that's the call for all of us, right?
Yeah, it's funny how Jerry is so descriptive. I haven't had one of these collars in years and years. I mean, probably since I was young. But I remember exactly what he's talking about. I mean, it was the way he described it being curled, and it's brought back some memories.
Absolutely. You know, people ask me a lot of times, how do you come up with these ideas for Dean's thoughts? And it's sort of like this story. To me, God is preaching to us all day long. And what happened in this case was Jerry just got the message in what God was preaching all day long. And this is where all the Dean's Thought stuff comes from. The way that I like to put it is, I like to think when I see something that maybe it's something I don't understand I like to think, what is God trying to tell me in this thing, whatever it is? And very often, God is telling you something. You just need to pay attention. But I think we miss so many messages because we're not looking for it. The Flea collar, stretch to activate. That's and it really is a great thing to think about. I never thought about it. And it was there the whole time.
Well, it begs the question so many times when people, they'll come, I don't know what God's trying to tell me. Have you asked?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that about other people. I'm saying that about myself. So many times it's,
100%.
we don't stop long enough to see, because, can God preach through a dog collar? Absolutely. He can preach through the most mundane things in your life if you're watching and wanting to hear from God.
Yep.
He'll speak to you in so many ways, and so many weird ways, like a dog, flea, and tick collar.
Job 8:7 says, "Your beginnings will be humble, so prosperous will your future be." It's a great scripture to put into the story, because it's one of Job's friends is telling him that basically that all the suffering that he is suffering is his own fault. And Job had to be wondering, think about it. Job is already suffering. He's already going through the roughest time possible. And then God allows this insufferable person to be sitting across the table from him, trying to explain to him why he's suffering so much, which is just increasing the level of suffering. Don't you know that Job had to be thinking, God, why? Just at least take this away.
This guy named Bildad. Of all people. Yeah, I left my Bible open because I love, we all have this person in our life.
Yeah, it's true.
We do. Bildad comes to Job and he's like, seek earnestly God, plead with the Almighty. But then he goes on to say, well, just ask some older people. Just ask for some. Job was connected at the hip with God during all this. And Job's thinking, you moron, I am connected with God, and you're asking me to go consult with these religious leaders, which, as we know later on in the Bible, are going to get us into all kinds of trouble. I'm going directly to the source. But we all have these people, and hopefully we're not one of those people, though I would probably fall guilty to that as well. But yeah, if you want to get a good laugh, just read Job 8. It really is humorous to hear. It's kind of like sometimes you say something and you think, well, I was right, until you hear it back.
Yeah.
have you ever heard yourself audibly saying something and you're like,
Yeah.
what were you even saying? That's what Job 8 is.
Yes.
Is that picture.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, and I go back to what I said a few minutes ago. The thing to ask, I think, when we find ourselves in this situation is, well, God, what are you trying to tell me?
Yeah.
God is speaking through all of it, right? Ecclesiastes 3:1 says, to everything there is a season, a time for every purpose. Solomon's looking at life here, and he's saying there's a time for everything. And those things that there's a time for, they're predictable. They become mundane. The same old you wearing the same old clothes, driving the same old car, eating the same old food, living the same old house, going to the same old job. Everything that's not of God becomes routine in some way, but the things of God become these great things. And I think what Solomon is saying here, everything apart from God doesn't really mean anything.
Right.
He's saying that it's the things of God are the only things that really matter, right?
Well, and the cool thing is that all these things that become mundane and we say are apart from God can become part of God.
Like a flea collar.
Like a flea collar,
Yeah.
like the sport of running,
Yeah.
like so many other ministries that have been formed out there. It's taken the thing that the thing that God has given you a passion for, so that in and of itself is from God, and using it to glorify Him in the process. I love any ministry that is pointing people to God. And
Amen.
I know ministries, sometimes they get a bad rap because it's like, what does that have to do? Well, in some way, it has everything to do with God because it's that person's passion. I've always said, if you're a crocheter, learn how to do that for the Lord and learn how to bring people to the Lord through that, and God will bless that.
Yep, absolutely. So again, this goes back to, this is a theme throughout this thing. Are you looking for Him? Because He's there in all of these things, just like He was in the flea collar. Isaiah 43:19 says, see, I am doing a new thing. God's kind of in the business of making things new. I've been watching, I don't even know if I can say it without tearing up. I've been watching all this Phil Robertson stuff recently. Phil Robertson, if you don't know who he is the patriarch of Duck Dynasty, and he passed away recently, and he went through a pretty tough time in the last few months. But Phil's life is such an unbelievable testimony to how God can transform somebody. This is a guy who is doing the most horrific things you can do prior to becoming saved. And when he was saved, the way he put it is, that man, that's a dead man. That man doesn't live anymore. I am somebody else now. And he never looked back.
Right.
And he had such an impact on so many people. And you talk about a guy who had an impact in a duck blind. His kids would bring friends over to go hunting with him, and the next thing they knew, Phil had him sitting on the couch talking to him about Jesus because he was going to share.
It wasn't on the couch, though. If you listen to some of his stories, if he ever got you in the pickup truck, he'd always say, hey, we need to go down the road and check on this and this. He gets you in the pickup truck, it's over.
It's over. Yeah. But, that's the kind of guy. I mean, this is a guy he had so much going for him, too. He was a quarterback for Louisiana Tech. He started in front of Terry Bradshaw.
Yeah.
That's how good he was at it. And he decided, that's not really who I am.
Yeah.
I really need to be doing this hunting thing. Who leaves a starting quarterback job to go and become a hunter?
To build duck calls.
But he did. And because, I'm convinced it's just God orchestrating his life in such a way to get him right where he wanted him. And man, oh man, this guy was just unbelievable. I mean, I've never seen, I've seen a lot of testimonies. I don't know that I've seen anybody who lived, who went from one extreme to another and lived and changed all of a sudden and lived that life for the rest of their lives, like Phil has.
And I know you listen to Unashamed. I've listened to it for years. But number one, what did he ultimately use to spread the gospel? something he was passionate about.
That's right.
Building duck calls. It funded his hellacious lifestyle for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
That guy died, but that same guy picked up that passion and used it to glorify God. I mean, they would tell stories almost on a weekly basis of people who would travel across the country that they gave their life to Christ through listening to this podcast or watching this show. Because think about who it attracted. It attracted hunters, fishermen, and ultimately a lot more than that once Duck Dynasty became, because the family was so endearing. But they did a simple thing at the end of every episode. They prayed.
Yeah.
Now, they never cussed, even though, I don't know if you remember this, but A&E actually put a bleep in one of the episodes one time.
Oh, did
And Willie said there was no cuss word there. He's emphatic about it. He said that was the producer trying to build hyperwater. Anyway, but people would drive across the country, pull up to his gate, which was like a half mile from his house, and walk up to his house, a man with guns everywhere,
Yeah.
and say, Phil, I need you to baptize me.
Yeah.
What would Phil do? He'd go get his shoes on, walk out, they'd walk down the river, and he would baptize. He didn't care who they were.
That's right.
And in a weird sort of way, he was one of the greatest evangelists of our time.
Yeah.
And he didn't fit the mold of any evangelist, which is should tell us something. There is no mold.
Jesus didn't fit the mold.
Evangelist is nothing more than sharing the gospel. We like to try to distance ourselves from that. Well, that's for the preacher to do, or that's for Phil to do. That's for whoever. Billy Graham. That's not for me. Every single one of us are called to do exactly what Phil Robertson did.
That's right.
Die to the old man and live for Christ and share it with others unashamedly, which is ironically the name of their podcast. So if you've never heard that podcast, go back and listen to every episode.
Yeah.
If you've never seen The Blind, which is the movie about Phil's life, you got to watch it.
Yeah.
It'll bring you to tears.
Yeah. Yeah. It's good stuff. You know, my favorite story of all the ones that I've heard, and man, I've heard a bunch of good ones, but I think my favorite one is Jace. When Jace was talking about how he had heard Phil make this pitch over and over again, and he had been a Christian for 7 years at this point, and then he was going to preach in a church for the first time, Phil. Mm-hmm. And Jace was like, man, I can't wait to hear what is he going to say? You know, he's going to say, you know, he's going to use all these magical words and he's going to make this big sermon. And he realized sitting in the pew there that what Phil did was say the same thing that he said every time he had somebody in front of him. It was just standing up instead of sitting down. And that to me was the most powerful thing.
Every time I heard Phil speak, I never heard him live, which I wish I could have. But every time I heard him speak, I loved the way that he started every one of the sermons that I've ever heard, which was people out there try to say there is no Jesus, or Jesus wasn't real, or Jesus wasn't effective. He said, I asked those people, what's today's date? And they'll say June the 12th, 2025. And he said, what happened 2025 years ago that the whole world tells time by that date? Must have been something pretty big. And I love how matter of fact, simple, without a smile, without a laughter.
Yeah.
He was so relatable in the way he presented the gospel, which was what made him so effective.
And that's who we all want to be.
Yeah.
Question: what is the best way to encourage someone who is pushing the limits of their comfort zone?
This sounds cliche. I'm going through a situation right now with a family member who's going through some pretty deep things. You hear the word, you hear "stay true," but what does that really mean? Mm-hmm. A family member's going through, so you know the situation, but it's pretty deep stuff. And truth, always stay true. But what does that mean? Sometimes truth may cost you. You know, this particular family member, you know, when you're talking about plea deals and things like this, I mean, this is how kind of messed up our system is. A plea deal will oftentimes entice people to say they did something that they didn't actually do. And truth in that case, that instance, could cost you something.
Yeah.
Because truth means that deal is now gone and it could be something more. But the answer to the question for me is stay true. Always stand on truth, because God is always, always, always pleased with truth. He might not be pleased with what the truth is, but he's always pleased with truth. That's
a good point. I was thinking about this from a whole different angle.
Yeah.
I think this is a cost-benefit analysis.
Yeah.
For people. What is the cost versus what is the benefit? The problem is we mess up our cost versus benefit analysis in our head very often. So what does marketing do? Marketing tries to get you to see the cost benefit analysis of this thing. What is this thing that this mug here that I'm going to buy? What is it going to cost me? And how much of it is it going to benefit me? And is it worth me parting with this money to get this thing? And that's all leaving your comfort zone is. To me, it's the benefit of leaving your comfort zone will outweigh the cost of the embarrassment or the whatever it is, put whatever you want on it, that it takes for you to leave your comfort zone. It's worth it. And the problem is we can't wrap our brains around, is it worth it, very often. And I think that's where we have to work. So it's why marketing companies exist, is to explain to us why we need that thing.
Right.
Well, we exist as Christians to try to explain to people why they need to get outside their comfort zones.
Right. Yeah, it's, we do marketing, obviously, with Upward Running. And when we have these conversations, what I love about marketing meetings where we're at, as opposed to, say, a tobacco company, I don't know, alcohol, whatever, is we know that the thing we have is both good for you physically, and it's good for you spiritually, and it's ultimately good for you eternally. And so I don't understand how sad it's got to be to sit in a marketing meeting for a company that is peddling things that are destroying your life. I don't see how that, and there's a lot of that out there. I mean, there's so many products out there that they're so marketed now, and it's spun in ways that, oh, this is really going to help you. Then they talk 100 miles an hour at the end of the commercial telling you all the things it could do to you.
Yeah.
What we have, and why I love our marketing meetings, is we have something that's going to help people.
Yep.
There's no question in my mind. I would not be sitting here if that wasn't the case. But it's what makes what we do so enjoyable, because there is no downside to what we do. Now, the only downside being me or you say something we shouldn't say, or we mess something up. I mean, it's that kind of stuff. But it's not, nobody ever finishes their first marathon and said, man, I wish I would have never done that. That's right. Nobody. Yeah. Now, they may be thinking that at mile 24, but not once they cross the finish line. And I love the business of peddling hope, and all the things that this ministry, of which you and I have a very little part of. This is, we're holding on to God's coattails in this ministry. Some days more than others. Some days it's a wonder we even make it through. But
we also get to share the same thing Phil got to share. He shared it with hunters, and we get to share it with runners.
Jesus.
Yep. If someone tells you they want to stretch and try something new, and you think what they want to do is a bad idea, what do you say to them?
The reason this was top of mind is because it just happened not too long ago. My first question is, well, have you prayed about it?
Yeah.
Because I know that I could be wrong. I've done this enough, and I've stuck my foot in my mouth enough to know that now it would have to be a pretty loud voice from God for me to make that statement. But I hedge my bet by saying, have you prayed about that?
Yeah.
And usually that accomplishes what I want. And if they say yes, then I'm not saying another word.
Yeah.
Because like I said, God will have to be screaming for me to override a yes to that question. If they say no, they've opened the door a little bit to kind of input my opinion. And I'm just like you. I'm an expert on my opinion, which many times gets me in trouble.
Well, for me, I look at this question and I think, well, why is it a bad idea? First of all, is it a bad idea from a Christian perspective? Because if it's a bad idea from a Christian perspective, then, I'm just going to be honest with you. I expect you to hold me accountable for something from a Christian perspective. It's your job. And it's my job to hold you accountable. If I see you going off the rails, then it's my duty, based on that book you've got right there in front of you, that I tell you, hey, dude, pay attention where you're going. Right. I don't have to say, hey, you're wrong, you're an idiot. I just have to say, man, pull it back a little bit. That's up to me to do that. And you should do that for me. And we do that for each other. I think as Christians, we don't do that enough. No. I think we very often see people that we know who are professing Christians, and they're about to drive off a cliff, and we don't stop them. And I'm not saying we need to get in the car and push the brake for them, but we should at least be outside the car waving our hands saying, hey, don't drive off that cliff. Look over here. Apply the brakes, something. Now, if it's something that's not for a Christian, that's a little harder to me.
This is something God has been working on me heavily. And it's the idea of what are we accountable for here? I've been struggling with this because did we talk about this already?
We talked about it last week a little bit.
So did I talk about taking the kids to dinner?
Mm-hmm.
And I asked the question, I'll recap what I said. I asked the question, there was a time when the default was God. Or at least in our culture, the default was God. And if you went against that, it was, what's the right word? It was, you were doing it intentionally. It was just, you were spitting in the face of God to go against God in our culture. And then there was a period of time where it became just kind of socially accepted. So you weren't necessarily spitting in the face of God, even though Scripture says that's exactly what you're doing when you sin against God. But our culture said, well, it's just, it's a white lie. Or it's just one Sunday. Or it's just one look. Or it's just one drag off of whatever. Or it's just one drink. Or it's not really a big deal. But I feel like where we're at in our culture today, and this is where God is really just raking me over the coals lately, is I feel like we're in a culture today, people don't know.
Yeah.
There is no reference to God in their life.
Mm-hmm.
And so when they go drink that thing, or they go smoke that thing, or they go sleep with that person, or they do whatever to their body, or they don't know that that's wrong.
That's right.
I think that is a huge part of our culture now. I look at kids these days, and you can see that what they're doing, they genuinely think it's right.
Yeah.
What is our responsibility here? They're driving toward a cliff.
Yeah, that's right.
And they don't even know it.
Mm-hmm.
The previous generations that I would talk about, and I'm generalizing here, so don't email me saying, well, there's exception. In general, societies in the past, they knew what they were doing. They were either spitting in the face of God, or they were just kind of being a little disobedient to God. I think there's a huge portion of our population today that have no concept that they're even doing anything wrong. And those are the ones who, to you and I, they make us so angry because we see what they're doing and we're like, this is wrong. This is in the face of God. Where are we going as a society? But to them, they don't know what we're talking about.
That's right.
They're ignorant. And I mean that in the most respectable way. It simply means they don't know.
Yeah.
To me, the accountability on our part has never been higher.
Yeah.
Because the contrast has never been this stark.
That's a good
between
point.
Right and wrong. It was, but the problem is the people, so many people, and this isn't giving them a pass. They're accountable. They will be accountable to God in the end, but so will we.
That's right.
And so, Dean, you saw that person walking down that tunnel toward a light, and they had no idea it was an oncoming train. And you did.
Yeah.
And you let them get splat. What should we be doing today? And that's the question I've been wrestling with a lot.
Well, let me pull this together with something else we were just talking about.
Okay.
What would Phil Robertson do? Phil Robertson would speak up.
He would sit them down.
He would say, how many times did you hear conversations where he would always dig down and find the sin in somebody's life and point it out to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I'm not saying that's a good thing. Now, he had a way of doing it that was
it is a good thing.
endearing. It is a good thing to do. It is a good thing to do.
Yeah.
It's hard to do.
It's got to be God-led.
That's right.
So many times it's Dean-led.
That's right.
Or so many times it's Mitchell-led. That's where we get into trouble.
That's correct.
But God is leading us to have those conversations. So many times we're like, I don't want to get involved. It's not my business. There's going to be blowback if I do that. If it's something this is kind of the litmus test for me. If I really want to go confront that person, that's not God.
Yeah.
When I'm sensing I need to go confront that person, but everything in my being is saying, whoa, 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 that's God.
That's a good point. That's a good way to put it.
I mean,
You're right.
I think as a society, as a faith community, as a Christian society, we're letting people walk headlong into dangerous situations. We know the fix, and a lot of times they don't.
It's a fact. When was the last time you stretched beyond your comfort zone? Well, I had a weird kind of stretch away from my comfort zone last week. So last week I started having an injury issue. Mm. I honestly, at this time last week, I thought surgery was inevitable.
When I talked to you, I thought that's the case.
My 14 years of running every day except one was over, and I was done. And 2 days later, I was feeling optimistic. It's still there, still giving me a hard time, but I've cut my mileage way back in order to try to let this thing heal. Ironically, you would think cutting back on mileage is going towards your comfort zone. That's not my comfort zone. Yeah. My comfort zone is to get outside the comfort zone and hurt more. And I can't do that right now. And that bothers me. And so, God has led me, and I'm convinced. This was very interesting. Last week, I was doing a workout on Thursday last week, and something in that workout just didn't feel right. I wasn't hurting in a way that was an injury type hurting. It was just something that said, this is not going well and you need to stop. And I couldn't put my finger on it. And I felt like a failure. I felt like I stopped and I'm like, why did you just stop? Mm-hmm. And then I realized a few hours later why I stopped. I stopped because a few hours later I couldn't walk. At the time it didn't really hurt much, but a few hours later I literally couldn't walk. And so I'm convinced that was God saying, whoa, buddy, too much, hold on. He was trying to tell me not to go off the cliff. And fortunately I didn't. But I'm convinced that if I'd have finished that workout, I would have been in the doctor's office this week for sure.
So the conversation that happened the next day kind of sums up our friendship. So the next day, you hear of people that they had this awful bike wreck, and the first thing the friend asks is, "Well, how's the bike?"
Yeah.
I talked to you. I saw your post, wrapped knee up. You're like, "Man, this happened yesterday. I didn't really sleep last night." What's the first question I asked? It wasn't, "Are you okay?" It was, "Well, did you run today?" And your answer was,
Of course. I didn't look at it that way, but now that you say it, that's funny. It can be terribly hard to stay on track as a runner or a walker. The world also makes it difficult to stay on track spiritually too. For pennies a day, Upward Running can make both of these journeys more fun and much easier. Join Upward Running today and get access to training plans, videos, and the best group of active Christians you will find anywhere. Go to upwardrunning.com and sign up today. All right, we're back. So here's a story for you. So this past week, there was a guy, I found this out on social media, that there was a guy who has been telling his wife is a runner. He has been telling his wife for years that he doesn't train. He doesn't even work out. He's like a programmer or something. And he's a relatively thin guy, but he said that he could run a marathon, no big deal, no training. And he had told her that a number of times. He said, if you sign me up for one, give me 24 hours notice and I'll run it. She did. Mm-hmm. She signed him up for a marathon and he ran a marathon 24 hours later.
Yeah.
And he finished the marathon in 5 hours and 58 minutes. Wow. Yeah. His claim was he could do it under 7 hours. He finished under 6 hours. So
I believe it. I mean, that's the brain. That's the mind right there.
That is the mind. That's exactly right.
I've got a buddy, Preston Denson.
Yeah.
He ran a 36-mile race one time, and he hadn't ran in over a year. 36-mile ultramarathon. But he's just one of those guys. He's got a brain of steel. Yeah. I mean, it's like, if I say I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it.
It's just one foot in front of the other.
No question.
Yep.
Yeah. And I mean, it is. That's what it is. Now, the next day for Preston and probably for this guy, they're hating life. I'm sure.
The picture I saw of this guy right afterwards was him with ice bags on his knees.
Yeah.
So I'm sure he had a hard time.
Smart? No.
No.
To those people, is it worth it? They would say absolutely.
Absolutely. I would do something like that. I would totally do something like that.
I went out and ran 6 miles the other day and hadn't ran in over a year.
That's right. Yeah. I think it's fun to challenge yourself that way. But here's the larger point. The larger point is that if you're out there and you think you can't do something, there is a really, really good chance that whatever it is you think you can't do, you can do if you'll convince yourself you can do it.
Well, and it's why we throw caution, because we know there are so many people like that guy, like me, like you, who they join the 5K challenge and they're like, walk and run, I don't have to do that. And I always say, can you go out and run 3 miles the first day of the program? Most people, yes. The second day, you're going to be hating life, you're going to be burned out, you're going to be injured, and you're never going to run again.
That's right.
Don't do it.
Yeah.
Because there are a huge part of the population is just that way.
Yeah.
Tell me true. I can't do it. That's all I need to hear.
That's true. Well, it's a time for Dean's Thoughts, and that's a time when I share something I've written about the intersection between running and faith. Well, have you ever gone out to run only to find your route was gone? Well, it happened to me twice recently. So this is about that. It's called Go Around. It was a great convenience. I had a loop located less than a mile from my house that was about 1.25 miles long. I used it for mile repeats, running the mile hard and then jogging for recovery back to the start line. It was a great place to work out until it wasn't. There were 2 railroad crossings on the loop, and one of the roads was a very lightly traveled road. Someone made the decision to eliminate one of them, putting up barriers on both sides to make 2 dead-end roads instead of a throughway. Oh well, it was nice while it lasted. I went for a run recently at a familiar place to do some 1,000-meter repeats. During my warm-up, I found out that they had changed the routing of the trail, and my former loop was no longer possible. I would have to find another way to get in my workout. Similar to my local route, I no longer had the option. So what did I do about both inconveniences? I moved to another location. The other locations may not be as good, but they get the job done. When something gets in your way, quite literally in these circumstances, you just find a way around it. I had a couple of options. I could go somewhere else, or I could modify my loops to accommodate the change. I chose the former and never looked back. So why do I even bring it up? Well, I see so many people who give up when faced with an obstacle. A minor injury leads to quitting altogether. That injury is just a change in your workout path. Go around it. I see others who give up when life gets busy and there seems to be less time. Those extra meetings and things you have to do are just changes to the loop. Go around it. I've seen people lose a training partner and stop running or walking because their partner is gone. It's just a change to the route. Go around it. No matter what gets in your way, just look at it like someone just made a decision to alter your training loop and find another way to get it done. But you don't understand. It's not that simple. Really? Isn't it? There are certainly times when unavoidable obstacles stop training progress for good reasons, but very often we just don't like that our favorite route was taken away and we just want to pout about it. So let's say that you have to get up earlier, and not only is it inconvenient, it's hard. But just think how much better you'll feel when you figure out how not to let that obstacle slow you down. It could take your training to an entirely higher level. You're hardcore now. When Mary and Joseph arrived in Bethlehem for the census, they expected to find a room and rest Mary's pregnant body comfortably, but that's not what happened. They had to alter their plans. Jesus was born in a less than hospitable place because Mary and Joseph went around the problem and did what they had to. That led to Mary's feeling in Luke 2:19, quote, "But Mary treasured up all these things and pondered them in her heart." She could have been bitter and thrown a fit, but instead she appreciated the change of plans and found a reverential peace as a result. Don't fret the obstacles that get in your way. Don't dwell on the inconveniences that make you change your plans. Instead, embrace them and go around. Whether it is something connected to your running or your walking or a tragedy that threatens your faith, find the way around quickly and don't slow down.
That's such a great reminder, Dean. Happens a lot.
I do.
We get railroaded, literally in your case.
Yeah.
But
I've seen so many people just give up because things get hard.
Yeah.
And man, that's the time to bear down a little harder, I think.
I think you and I are so hard-headed that the going around comes naturally.
Yeah.
My wife got tickled at me when we went on a cruise a few months ago. And, I've been rucking. And I'm like, well, I got to take my rucksack. And she's like, you can't take a 55-pound backpack through TSA. It's just not going to happen. And sure enough, I looked it up and I went on the Go Rucks website and they says, you can't take these plates through TSA security. So what did I do? I took my bag, and when I got on the boat, I went and I got the weirdest looks because I walked into the gym, I opened up my backpack, and I got 2 25-pound dumbbells. And I put them in the backpack, and people were like, because it looked like I was stealing them, Yeah. I'm putting them in a bag and throwing them on my back and headed out the door. But you just got to improvise, right?
That's right. Right. That's a good example of going around, for sure. I remember a guy, this has been, 20 years ago, but this guy, he was in his 60s, and he was a super fast runner. He was running like low 18s for 5Ks in his 60s.
Wow.
Yes, he was fast. I mean, he was he has a lot of state records in the state of Georgia, and but anyway, he was so healthy. He never got injured or anything. He had one major injury, done. I never ever saw him again. And he just quit running, and according to what I heard, he gained about 60 pounds in the next 6 months and never ran again. Wow. And I get it. You know, injuries are hard things to get around. I mean, it's so frustrating. I'm dealing with a friend of ours right now, Darren, is dealing with an injury, and it just won't go away. Right. And he'll have a couple of good weeks, and then it'll back up. And he'll have a couple of good weeks, and it'll back up. And it's so frustrating to him. But he's not quitting. Right. He's just doing what he can to get through and do as much as he can, and then eventually he'll get over
Darren,
this
if
thing.
You're listening, I got this cool thing called rucking. You should give it a try. Works wonders on injuries.
Well, and how many times have we talked about embracing difficulty? Because, when we embrace difficulty, that's where we grow the most. Yeah. It really is. And I know that sounds trite, but it's true. That's where we find the most growth, period. So
it's a great reminder, Dean.
Yep.
There is no better way to start the day than in the Word. Our Bible in a Year Challenge is a great way to start the day in the Word as I read through the entire Bible in 365 episodes. I also share helpful tips each day along with encouraging quotes. Choose the self-paced challenge so that you can go at your pace. You must be an Upward Running member for access to this exciting challenge. So if you're not a member, sign up today and get started. If you are a member, it is just a click away to get started today.
Every week I share a reason why running and/or walking is so awesome. Well, it gives us some geeky data to look over. How do you like that? I mean, this may not be a big positive for everybody. Not everybody loves data and looking at numbers and things like that. But if you like it, man, these new watches have all... I got so excited last week. What happened last week? I got excited last week because I got a 90 on my sleep score.
And you texted me.
And I texted you. I'm like, man, I didn't tell everybody. Shoot, I got a 90. I was so excited.
And it also illuminates, everybody says, I just can't sleep in a hotel. I was in Dallas for 3 nights.
Yeah.
I was in the 50s all 3 nights. Come back here, 91.
Wow. Just what a difference.
I don't know if it's as much the bed or if it's just the atmosphere, Hollywood and with me. Yeah. It's just, you're all out of sort. People that travel nonstop for their career, hats off to you. For sure. I guess you get used to it.
I guess so.
But man, for me, I just do not sleep well.
Well, running has all sorts of numbers.
Yeah.
And whether it's you're tracking your sleep or you're tracking your heart rate or your HRV or whatever it is that you're tracking, you can track all sorts of numbers through these cool watches now. I guess that's one of the things I always loved about baseball. Baseball has always been a statistical game. And maybe that's why I was such a huge baseball fan when I was younger, because it's always been a big part of baseball. It's never been a big part of like football or basketball. To some degree, but not nearly like baseball. Mm-hmm. I mean, baseball, every time the guy goes to the plate, they give his batting average. Yeah. And they've done that forever. That didn't used to be the thing with basketball players.
Well, what's going to take it to the next level? And this is kind of ties into what I said about, what's going to be the next greatest advancement in the sport of running. I say it's going to be AI. But one thing that's going to put that on the fast path is I was listening to a podcast just recently. I think it was with Callie and Casey Memes right before she got put on Surgeon General. But they were talking about how these devices, these wearables, can do way more than what they're currently doing. And what they're wading through right now is, there's so many things that will allow these wearables to kind of take our health into our own hands. But whatever the industry is that controls HIPAA is fighting it. Because if we can get our medical records into these devices can do way more. But the medical and I shouldn't be generalizing here because I know enough to be dangerous, but the concept makes sense. The medical industry doesn't want to turn loose of all of that. And her comments were they don't want to relinquish that power because physicians will always be relevant. Let me say that.
Yeah.
But there are so many things that we can track on our own now with these wearables.
Yeah.
And they hide behind HIPAA. It's a privacy thing. But her comparison was, we've done this with the banking industry. I can give any device access to my checking account now. It's my checking account.
Yeah.
I should be able to decide what happens to it.
Yeah.
It's not the case with medical records now. But if she was saying that if our medical records could be pulled into some of these device software and AI, that it could flag us of things that are coming, and so, yeah, I mean, that's exciting to think, will I just sign up and let anybody have my medical records? No. But at the same time, I would let a lot more people have my medical records than I have to have my bank account.
That's true.
I mean,
Yeah, that's true.
So, I mean, the whole conversation made a ton of sense. So
Yeah.
whether they will ever get there, who knows? But
Yeah.
it's exciting to think about the advancements that could come for our health, for our benefit in a lot of cases.
Well, that's just one more thing. Well, a lot of times we talk about professional running in this time slot here, but this week I want to talk about high school running, because high school running is like on a stratospheric level right now. Jane Hedengren is, wow. She's just tearing it up. She just broke the high school record for the mile. She ran 4:23 for the mile. She ran 9:17 for the 2 mile. She had a race where she was running a mile against the best runners in the country, where they had all come together, all the best milers in the country, and she won by over 100 meters. That's ridiculous for somebody to be that good.
Yeah.
And but she is that good, and I thought maybe she's the greatest high school runner of all time. But then I remember Mary Kane, and I'm like, this is Mary Kane reinvented. Hopefully, she does better as a pro than Mary Kane did. But Mary's probably still the queen of high school girls runners. But she's impressive. Jane is very impressive, and she looks so mature when she's running. That's the interesting thing about her. Well, in that same meet that she dominated the mile, they had a boys' mile that had 5 high school boys in a race that had all broken 4 minutes for the mile.
Wow.
That's incredible that they have that many. I just remember, back when I was a state champion when I was in high school, I won the mile. I had the all classification best time. I had the fastest time in the state of Georgia when I was a senior. And in this particular race, they had 2 races. They had the elite race that had these guys in it, these sub-4 guys, and then another 12 guys. And then they had a second race where the other guys, the other pretty fast guys. I would have finished 11th in that race.
In the second race.
In the second race, yes. And so I'm like, those guys, it's amazing how many fast guys there are. And I'm sure there's a lot of guys that could have finished inside that top 11 that weren't there.
Right.
And so, there's just so many. And then there at another meet, a guy named Cooper Lutkenhouse just broke a 29-year-old record for the 800 meters. Michael Granville had held that record for 29 years, and he broke it by a few tenths of a second, 146. Again, and the amazing thing about Cooper is Cooper's a sophomore. Mm-hmm. We hear about a lot of girls that do really well when they're really young. Cooper's younger.
Yeah, usually the guys, it's later.
Yeah. So, man, I can't imagine what he's going to be pretty soon.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I wonder if it's the shoes or if it's the fact that they see others doing it these days.
I go back to, I think they specialize at such an early age.
And that could be. Back in my day when I was running in high school, I had no idea how anybody else in the country was doing. I knew how the people in the state of Georgia were doing because I was running against them, but I had no idea how somebody in California was doing. Well, now you have access to all this information.
Everything on one app. Yeah.
Yes. And all of it. So I would imagine I can't help but think that if I had this feeling that there were other guys out there that were faster than me, and that was in my mind, would I have run faster? I don't know. Maybe not, but maybe.
I didn't realize, and I remember the kid because I think he was there when Landon was there, but the high jumper at Coahulla Creek, you heard about him? Mm-mm. I think he just won state in the high jump.
Yeah.
And he had never been a high jumper in his sophomore or junior year. It must have been his sophomore year because Landon it was his first year when Landon was there. He was coming out to try out for tennis, and he forgot his tennis racket. So he came over to the track one day, and one of the coaches said, well, can you jump? And he's like, yeah, I think I can. And now he's state champion high jumper.
Wow.
So that kind of debunks the whole been doing it all his life.
Yeah.
Forgot his tennis racket, so I'll do track.
That's a pretty cool story.
And now he's state champion. So.
That's pretty good. You know, when I was in high school, we had a kid who was a really good hurdler. A hurdler now. What is the one event that you have to practice and practice and practice and practice? Hurdling, timing on the hurdles, right? This guy would come down, literally, there'd be our baseball field was less than a quarter of a mile away from our track. He would come down off the baseball field in his baseball uniform, in his baseball cleats, and run on our asphalt track and win the hurdles race.
Wow.
And then he'd go back to the baseball game.
Wow.
Yes. That was one of the most amazing things I ever saw. Yep. Well, how about a sprinting question for this week's trivia question? In the high hurdles, the men run 110 meters while the women run 100 meters. Who is faster, the men at 110 meters or the women at 100 meters?
It's an interesting one, dude.
I like that.
I was trying creative on that one.
I was trying to come up with something creative. I hit the jackpot. If you know the answer to that, you can send it to dean@upward.org and be the first person to answer that question correctly and be a member. You will win $20 off in the store.
So before you sign off here, before you go into the motivational quote, if you're not a member, gosh, what are you waiting for?
Yeah.
We need you to become a member of the Upward Run Club.
Absolutely.
Upwardrunning.com. Get signed up today.
Amen. Our motivational thought of the week: running is meditation for people who can't sit still.
That is so true.
Isn't that good?
Yeah.
I know I can think better when I'm moving.
Yeah.
I'm just convinced of that.
Oh, for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. Of course, my problem is I can't remember what I was thinking while I was moving. I can't remember it when I get still.
That's why I love rucking and walking, because when those thoughts come in my head, I text myself.
Well, I do the same thing.
I text, and the cool thing with the earbuds and stuff, now you don't even got to pull your phone out.
Yeah.
Just, hey Siri, text.
It's true.
I'm not going to say it because my phone over there will.
Yeah.
But
I do it too. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, some of my greatest thinking is done out on the road or on the trail.
Absolutely. So hopefully you're getting in some good thoughts there too. It's a good time to commune with God as well. And until next week, may God bless every step of every run and or walk. Go out there and shine your light.
Good job, Dean.
For more information about Upward Running, visit upwardrunning.com. If you have questions about your salvation, click on the Peace with God tab. There is nothing more important. Thanks for joining us today.